All right, here we go. It's amazing. Here in studio, we really seem to be right on it. Now, I hope you're all seeing a camel.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I thought as I'm looking for any kind of signs of hope, and Ukraine stole a camel from Russia. So I'm going to take that as a sign of hope because it says, as it says here, um, uh, Moscow is low on military vehicles, so they're going back to the caravan days. All right, um, and then cozy San Francisco. So our little pub group that Rudy is the pub master of our little pub group. And we had a long debate about whether San Francisco was cozy. So we'll ask for your opinion when I finish here. If in any way, shape, or form you could consider San Francisco as cozy. And they talk about bookstores and foggy mornings and all the things that we love. And where did this come from? It came from an insurance company that um, keeps tabs on social media for their business, which is travel insurance. And that here's the criteria: UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the number that are around it, bookstores, cafes, cinemas, museums, the amount of rain, and anyway, an Instagram hashtag cozy. And so San Francisco's the 12th coziest city in the world and the first coziest city in America. And you look down at this picture, and I think many of us have been in places of San Francisco that remind us why we love it so much. Um,
Hmm.
and here are the ladies of San Francisco, the old Victorian. I think this one must be near the Castro district, just a wild guess. Other cities, Boston, Chicago, New York City, were mentioned. The number one cozy city in the world is Brussels. Iko and I've been there with Ramsey, in fact, to Brussels, and I think we missed the cozy parts. Um, but we often think of San Francisco as, market and down around here, but you go out to the neighborhoods and there's just tons and tons of neighborhoods. We were fortunate enough to live around here while I was going to medical school. So we were just right on the edge of the fog belt in the morning, and it would burn off pretty rapid. Uh, this part of the city rarely gets fog. Of course, the fog comes pulled in off of the ocean, but the neighborhoods here it just reminds you that San Francisco is more than just along Market Street. Um, they listed a few examples of the most cozy parts of the city. We lived in the Coal Valley when we were in medical school, right near the Golden Gate Park, which was just a wonderful escape to recharge our batteries and after studying too much. Um, and the Sunset District, the Richmond area, the waterfront, a couple of other places, the Hayes Valley, where the Beta Breakers marathon goes through. Um, and here comes the segue. It was America's first Chinatown, number one. And this is a segue to the Orient. So this is the World Series. And I promised to give you the history of baseball in Japan, which is quite surprising. But it has reached fruition with these three players from Japan, wisely signed by the Dodgers, and they played a big role. The Yamamoto was the most valuable player in last week's World Series. But the history of baseball goes back a long way, and it was sort of one of the points of early points of Western influence. You'll remember Japan was closed off for the rest of the world up until 1854. And all of a sudden, there was a samurai rebellion against the throne, and they put a new emperor on, Meiji, and all of a sudden, uh, uh, global influence came pouring in, and the samurai they were very educated, and they divided the world up, and they said, look, we'll get our laws from Great Britain, we'll get our business know-how from America, we'll get our manufacturing from Germany, and they sent these educated, enlightened Japanese spread out all over the world to learn what they could and come back and industrialize at breakneck speed. And baseball, oddly enough, was one of the things that they thought was a sport that could impart cultural values and teamwork and discipline and endurance. And I think it's no accident that, it's a team sport, but there's a lot of one-on-one in the great samurai tradition of the pitcher going against the batter. So you have these books on baseball in Japan, and get this, 1872. That's, baseball was barely on its legs in America in 1872. It had been around, I think, for 10 years in America, and there was a British game called Rounders that it copied. But
Oh, wow.
baseball been around a long time, and this is the gentleman given credit. He was an American teacher at the University of Tokyo,
Okay.
and he introduced it. And there's a statue to honoring Horace Wilson, and even the consulate in San Francisco played a role. And so 1922 was the 150th year anniversary of baseball in Japan. Um, and this is a Japanese scoreboard. Here you can see the Japanese team got 32 runs. Oops, this is cut off. The American team only got 9. So the Japanese were quick learners. They had the whole country,
Wow.
and they would get their best players from the whole country and play the Americans who happened to be in the country. So it's no surprise that the Yokohama Foreigners Club lost early on. Um, there was some incidents, as you might expect. Americans got tired of being beaten 32 to 9. And after one particular game, they went to what's called a sacred wall. And this school was one of the leading, all the best baseball players went to this school. And the Americans were perceived to have desecrated this wall, and there was violence, and the relations suffered for a while. Um, so it spread across Japan, and the government saw it as a vehicle to modernize and teach moral training of in the business world. And
Oh,
by 1915, it was a big deal in high schools across Japan. So what comes to mind is March Madness. They went through a tournament, uh, 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 a practice tournament in the spring, and then the summer was the big tournament. And when radio and TV came to Japan, these games were broadcast just like our March Madness quite early. And it became a year-round sport, uh, showing perseverance and building team harmony. And then there was a lot of Japanese ritual playing into it. So at the end of the tournament, the players ritually scooped up infield dirt and treated the dirt as with reverence. Um,
wow.
so uh, by uh, at the tournament's end, the championship game, you had the first pitch, just like we have the first pitch by prominent politicians. This is an interesting photo because this is not a politician. This is the editor of the best known newspaper in Japan. And he's in a traditional kimono, but his friend here is in top hat and tails, a tuxedo. And when I saw this guy standing kind of out of place and overdressed for the occasion, I just couldn't help but remembering this historic photo of the Japanese coming to the Missouri battleship to sign the end of the war documents. Um, and then let's skip ahead to 1934 when America and Japan got together in many different ways over baseball. In 1934, and so this is in the Depression, and this is a tension between Japan in America. Roosevelt hadn't liked what Japan was doing in Asia. They'd invaded Mongolia, Manchuria, I should say, Manchuria, and so Roosevelt slapped an oil embargo. So Japan was shut off from the oil markets. And so there was tension. Um, so the powers that be thought, well, let's try to break some of that tension. One thing we have in common is baseball. Let's send an all-star team over. And it was headed by one of the early fathers of baseball, Connie Mack. along with prominent baseball players from the American League. And the hero, of course, and probably the best known athlete in the world at the time was Babe Ruth. And Japan rolled out the red carpet. There were other famous players too, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, and then this guy Mo Berg, which I'll get to in just a second. Um, so Babe Ruth
That's pretty cool.
was quite the ham, but he made himself lovable to the Japanese, sort of like Otani today. So now you see Otani's image on the side of buildings in Tokyo, and you see his face splattered all over garments and jerseys. Um, and he played a big role in getting the Dodgers to the championship, but in the actual last game, he didn't. But his fellow Japanese teammates did. There was another pitcher named Suzuki, and anyway, the newspapers were full of baseball news, as they were back then. I think this is a stamp that came out. And this is a famous photo. It was a rainy day, but they would never postpone a game because it was a tour, and that these American players would never get back. So they would play come rain or shine. Um, and Babe Ruth endeared himself to younger players. Was a truly goodwill ambassador. So now about Mo Berg. Mo Berg. Um, People couldn't figure out why he was included with all these famous baseball players. He'd been in the big leagues for over a decade, but he was a third string catcher. Um, but he was the smartest baseball player of the time. Casey Stengel said he that made him the strangest baseball player he'd ever met. Because why? He was also a spy for the United States, working with the forerunner of the CIA. He spoke
He's
15
a smart.
languages, and he did some important work. St. Luke's Hospital was the tallest building in Japan, and he dressed up in a kimono, got some flowers, and said he was taking it to the daughter of a diplomat, but he never delivered the flowers. He went to the hospital roof to look around and take pictures, photographs of the layout of Tokyo, the harbor, the military installation, the railroad yards. And those
Oh,
that
wow.
information was used by Jimmy Doolittle when he attacked Tokyo a mere 8 years later. There's a wonderful podcast that dramatizes history. It takes the bits of history and weaves it into a storyline. It's wondery. If any of you love history enough that you'd want to listen to that, and the show that they did on Mo Berg was amazing. Not just for what he did in Japan, and this is Doolittle's raid. Um, they took
Wow.
off from an aircraft carrier, came right in over Tokyo. Uh, it was the fires that did most of the damage because Tokyo at the time was made out of wood and shoji screens. You know, they didn't have real windows, but they had paper windows that let in the light. Um, but most of this podcast is what he did in Europe after he uh, came back from Japan. He was more focused on Europe. And of course, what everybody was worried about at that time, and then you'll remember the movie Oppenheimer, always in the backgrounds. What are the Germans doing? Are they going to get the bomb before we do? So they sent Mo Berg, not as a baseball player, but just as a spy. He pretended like he was a Swiss graduate student, and he went to a lecture by Werner Heisenberg, who had a Nobel from, the whole Heisenberg principle of uncertainty, which is you can't tell where an electron is, basically. Um, and he was listened to Heisenberg lecture, and he decided he was to decide if they were very close to building an atom bomb. So he's sitting there in the lecture hall, and he slips past the SS guards and actually talks to Heisenberg. He had in his pocket two things: a pistol and a cyanide pill. And if he
Oh,
decided, based on what he was hearing, that the Nazis were close to the bomb, he was to pull out his pistol and shoot Heisenberg and then swallow the cyanide. Fortunately for Berg, it was pretty clear that the Germans were not close, and that he didn't have to kill Heisenberg and himself. There was some intelligence that Heisenberg, who was not sympathetic with the government, was himself sabotaging, even though he was the head of the uh, um, attempts to build a bomb in Germany, that he was slow walking it. So that's controversial. So that baseball tour wasn't the first tour. Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, there was a movie called The Catcher Was a Spy. And I don't know, for some reason we just saw it a couple of weeks ago, and the I think it was it was either on Canopy or it was on Netflix, and so it was basically about what uh, what you're just talking about now.
Oh, really? To catch a spy?
Yeah, it's called The Catcher Was a Spy.
Oh, the catcher
yeah,
was a spy.
Chester.
Okay, that's going to be easy to remember.
Yeah,
Wow. Well,
so that
that's the karma of our study group, isn't it?
yeah, okay.
Okay. Um, so fast forward, the war starts, and Aiko was born in the internment camp, but they played baseball in the internment camp, and I think she was born in Cody, Wyoming, and I think the Boy Scouts played the Japanese Boy Scouts played the Cody Boy Scouts. So and of course there's a lot of stories about that. There was a friendship that grew between a little kid who would become Senator Alan Simpson and a Japanese American um, who Aiko, what was his name? Uh, um, uh, Alan Simpson was friends with who?
Maeda.
Minetta, thank you.
Maeda.
Okay. Thank you, Shigeko, because Shigeko and Aiko went back to the camp. Heart Mountain was the name of the actual camp, a few miles outside of Cody.
Wow.
So there was that, and then in post-war America, a whole string of Asians came, not exclusively Japanese, but interestingly. Taiwanese, Chinese Taiwanese played baseball because they had been occupied throughout. I think they'd been occupied from around 1910 on. So Japan and their love of baseball trickled down to occupied Taiwan. And they had, and you'll probably know if you follow Little League that the Taiwanese Little League baseball players keep winning world championships over and over again. Um, a number of players, he was a Taiwanese, I think, and all the way up through in this century, Ichiro Suzuki, he was known for his speed, and he was left-handed, which meant he had a couple of steps towards first base just because he was left-handed. And he took advantage of that. He would be hitting the ball, not to hit it very far, but just to get contact and get to first base before the other team could recover. Anyway,
Oh,
Ichiro Suzuki in this century, up until Otani, was the best known. Okay, China. Um, the um, Chinese music, Chinese rap. I saw this article. I rubbed my eyes. I couldn't believe it. This guy named Sky is your God. Is the Chinese rapper, the most famous now, drawing the largest crowds in the
wow.
world. In the world. Australia, Britain, France, Italy. And so just an interesting development. And there's plenty of Chinese around the world, but they had never been attracted to any of the previous Chinese rappers until um, uh,
Guys,
Mr. Chen, the economist, calls him. He has more monthly listeners than Eminem, Kanye West, and the Canadian Drake. So go figure. And here's the thing. The content of his lyrics is more devout, not the edgy, uh, 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 dirty, really, salacious uh, lyrics of American rap, but closer to a monk than a thug. And that's an interesting development, too. Why not? Why does rap have to be about the sordid stuff? And so uh, divine remonstrations, that would
wow.
be like a monk, blending hip hop beats with traditional Chinese instruments. So he's tapping into China's musical um, uh, past and talking about not losing kindness and singing to a karma code, an Asian religious code. He's in contact with that and advising people not to be obsessed with wealth. That's different. Uh, there was a bridge. Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, I noticed that he's got prayer beads on his left wrist, or maybe his right wrist. I don't know. Yeah, left wrist
Yeah,
down there. Yeah, so that would imply the his perhaps where he's coming from as the monk style.
yeah,
Huh?
yeah. So isn't life
Interesting.
has surprises for us? Um, so hooray for Sky. There was an artist that bridged that. He was earlier a Taiwanese pop star, and he was the one that generated enough critical mass to turn Asian hip hop into onto music shows where they would have sing-offs with rap artists facing each other, like a tournament. So that was Jay Chow before then. So Sky, he actually studied performing arts, and that's where he started experimenting with his what eventually became his current style. Um, but he sings in English, and so that's another attraction for Asians that want to be familiar with English. Um, but someone said that he brings green belts to the plant in the cultural desert because I guess Chinese culture for young kids hasn't been as compelling. So he has planted a seed there. He he stands right now by himself, as opposed to Korean K-pop, where there's just dozens and dozens of performers. But there's a Puerto Rican rapper that named Bad Bunny who's going to perform at the uh, uh, Super Bowl, who's brought Puerto Rican culture to America, and maybe Sky will do the same. All right. Enough of the more entertaining stuff. Um, the the outcome of Trump's big meeting, and we talked a lot about it last week. The tariff wars with China, and the tariff war all of a sudden wasn't looking at imports. All of a sudden, it was looking at exports. And China expanded into export controls with their rare earths. And how did that work out? Who won? Tariffs versus rare earths. And China did, just as predicted last week. Nicholas Kristof agrees with the economist analysis, and again gets into the rare earths. And we learned last week from Pepper that the we looked at the elements, the table, and we learned about the center of these rare earths, and he pointed out that it was the making of magnets, which is everywhere in our modern economy, transportation, communication. And this was the 17 lanthanides. How do you say that, Pep?
Definitely.
anyway,
Yeah,
used it.
you said it right, lanthanides.
Okay, used it in smartphones, vehicles, medical equipment, military, and so they Trump started the war, and it looks like she finished it. This is surprising to me. A single submarine can require 4 tons of rare earths. That's astounding to me. And so it wasn't. We should have known. It wasn't the first time China used uh, export controls of rare earths. They did it with Japan 15 years ago. And so, uh, and all it took for for him to use it with America was Liberation Day. The next day, they said, "Okay, you're going to play that way. Here's what we have in mind." Uh, and then this month, he greatly expanded those export controls as Trump threatened 100%. So uh, here we are now at the end. They've called a truce, but Trump did push Xi to reveal what his hole card was, what his strong suit was. And lo and behold, China has weaponized rare earths, and he can pull it out again. There's a truce this year, but at the end of the year, we know what we're facing, and it's not gonna be easy, even if we go all out to develop our own rare earths. We saw what's involved in the mining. Last week we focused on lithium, but it would take us 5 to 7 years to develop our own rare earth industry.
Wow.
So Nicholas Kristof happened to be giving a talk to a group of international relations experts, and he asked for a show of hands of who won, and it was overwhelming that China won. And now we need our own rare earths Manhattan project, just like we had with Oppenheimer and the nuclear weapon. But it's going to take a while. Uh, yes, Bruce.
Yeah, no, the question, I'm trying to remember, perhaps you said it last year, the last week when we were talking about the mining lithium, but one of the things somewhere along I came across was the fact that Tibet is where those mines are, and they're having some really um, some societal problems in Tibet because the uh, people are dying in the mining using the mining of this. So it's very
Mhm.
tough on the miners. And
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Yeah,
so
we had some pictures of a mine. We had some pictures
I
of
thought that was the
dead fish.
yeah.
Yeah, polluting the water. Yeah. Um, so uh, Trump retreated, and he's been using export controls on our computer chips. So, as part of the negotiation, he backpedaled on what the way we've been using sophisticated chips. Um, and the other thing Trump did is he backed down on doing anything about TikTok. He's kept it going. Who knows why? But even though there are still national security concerns, having TikTok being so well embedded in our whole society. Um,
Hmm.
The other thing that Trump had to backpedal on was allowing the new Taiwanese president to come to America. Biden did allow the Taiwan president to come, and China was very mad, but Biden was strong. And Biden being strong is not the image that we got from that last election, obviously. But what he did at some point, historians will have to weigh, and at least he stood up to China and allowed the then president to come to Manhattan. Um, and she now sees our weakness. And ordinarily, when you're in a fight, you want allies. Well, Trump has antagonized most of our Asian allies. So we'll see how if he can fight his way out of this. Um, so what uh, America has done to China is reminding and seeing America back down. The other leaders around the world see our vulnerability. And it's previous administrations have talked the talk about Xinjiang and Tibet, criticizing human rights, and probably Trump is not going to play that card. And it's not going to push on Xinjiang and Tibet, let alone Taiwan. And a map, what are we talking about here? And Bruce was just talking about Eastern Tibet and mining. Um, uh, and obviously, human rights are the suppression in Tibet of Tibetan Buddhism, which is a particular kind of Buddhism that happens to also be popular in Mongolia. Somehow these two cultures had linked in the 1700s and 1800s around religion. Here, the furthest west, Xinjiang, the religion isn't Buddhism, it's Islam. And that's where things have been centered. Um, uh, and this just says what I repeats what I just said about ethnic Mongols being attracted to Tibetan Buddhism. But in Mongolia, they also have these other religions, including Christianity. And get this, Genghis Khan's mother was a Nestorian Christian, which is I find endlessly fascinating. So here we are, and what is Xi's playbook? Well, if you look at the 2,500-year-old philosophical tome on the military, The Art of War, the best thing is to win without fighting, physically fighting. That's the acme of skill. And so we're in a situation now where China is projecting military power, and maybe he has convinced Trump to reduce the number of patrols through the South China Sea. I should have got a map of that up. And that a lot of our allies that border on the South China Sea, like the Philippines, like Vietnam, They see this as an enormous setback for their security. So the amount of global credibility that we've lost in this whole episode makes America look weak, and Trump, of course, would hate that and would never admit to it. And so, where are we? Who's vulnerable if rare earths are turned off? As we said before, batteries, cars, new data centers, the equipment for those. And a lot of people are advising Trump to stand down. He'll never stand down. What he'll do is declare a make-believe victory and avoid tariffs and hope China just quietly retreats as well. That's the best that we're going to get. So that was last week. That's Nicholas Kristof's verdict. It seems reasonable to me. Let's just rewind though, and for a little bit more on the story to the leading up to last week's momentous meeting. So you remember when Earth metals export controls were first announced. Enraged Trump, he did 100% tariff on China, which China denounced, but they didn't match 100%. They knew that they had enough of a weapon with their export control on rare metals. And so they didn't even bother to match 100% tariffs. They had played their whole card and retaliated skillfully and quietly, walk softly, but carry a big stick. America raised port charges for Chinese ships, so China did the same. And China realizes their weak point is aircraft engines. So she has pushed hard to have China develop their expertise on aircraft engines, so they're not don't have to rely on us, and they want to be the indispensable country and not have to worry about others. So China, by use of rare earths, is developing a new strategy, and they've for even they've lost a lot of exports to the United States with all that, but they've more than made it up with the rest of the world. It doesn't look like this on a graph, but because this is in percentages, but China's overall exports this year grew by 8%, even as the American trade fell by 27%. So they're doing just fine. The and so this just summarized what I've already said. We've covered this all pretty well. But China has an important trading relations with over 70 countries. So they're not, they're becoming less reliant on America. By the way, last week, part of the settlement was that China would, in fact, buy more soybeans. We spent a lot of time talking about that. So China has some other arrows in its quiver. They can dump export goods into markets as a malevolent act designed to harm other countries. They can destroy nascent industries by overwhelming it with their exports. Uh, and they are also a donor country when it comes to loaning money. So we're a huge debtor country, and a lot of that is to China, and they can play around with that and monkey with the bond market. Uh, uh, they can call in their loans and cause a lot of problems. And the Economist calls that the $1 trillion chokehold, this loaning money. And they've used it. Uh, we don't tend to notice it one by one, but when you look back, here are the countries that they've used their monetary firepower against. Japan, we talk about how they use export controls, but even Norway and Lithuania, when they were perceived to being hostile to China in the markets, and Australia. I think Australia put some export controls on iron, and China did not take kindly to that. And then there's some question about domestic British politics and whether a spy case has been dropped to please China. So the one observer said we really made a big mistake when we started mucking around and playing around and strategizing over trade because we've woken China up. And so Xi Jinping in particular has been a hawk on China being self-reliant, and events has proven him correct. This There's a little joke there. I won't go into that. And the trade war has made Xi in the autocratic form of ruling popular. The Xi came into power saying that China had to project a strength and diversify in many different sectors of the economy, and he's been proven correct. And China just did a new 5-year plan that's doubling down on China's approach. So the 5-year plan from 2026 to 2030 is going to be the Xi plan. You remember we talked about the book by Dan Wang, and he wrote an editorial. This is the thrust of it, and I think it's a very, very interesting editorial, and I think I'll save that for next time. So I'll throw the discussion open. Any thoughts?
John, just on national, I mean, today is election day in many states. You didn't mention Mondami in New York or Prop 50 in California. I don't know if those could be major change points for Trump. I mean, my understanding is Prop 50 is a direct affront to Trump by Gavin Newsom and sort of a beginning of an assault. I don't know what others think.
Yeah, no, it's standing up to what he's doing in Texas. And Trump figures New York is his home, uh, basically from the Queens. And I don't know if any of you followed up Bob's recommendation on The Apprentice, the movie. It shows him rising in New York under the tutelage of Roy Cohn. Um, you just got to remember, Trump was once the king of Manhattan. He fought with his father. His father was satisfied with housing projects in the Queens, but Trump said no. There's a bigger game to play in Manhattan, and he made that jump, and that's part of it. And I think he sees psychologically Mondami as a threat to his perceived control of New York. Yeah, Tom.
I wrote 175
Yeah, I
postcards.
thought it was pretty interesting. I read an article about how China is getting into building commercial airplanes, but they need a lot of the technology from the United States. They already build the airplanes. I mean, they're behind Boeing and Airbus, but they build a lot of airplanes and they use it. They use the airplanes themselves inside of China and other parts of the world, but it hasn't been approved by whoever the governing agency for the world on using commercial airplanes. But one of the things that they lack is some of the technology. So they import some of the technology and the electronics from the US, but they've been having a rough time getting some of that stuff from the United States lately. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It just reminds. Before I go on, Ika wants to make sure that everybody knows she wrote 175 postcards for Mandami.
No, for Proposition 50.
For 50, of course. Okay, of course. When we were in China uh, in 1999. We took a lot of legs of our trip. We met our son Jeremy there, and many of the legs we took were by taxi because there just wasn't a train that would get from A to B in anything like a efficient time. But there were about 3 or 4 legs that we took on airplane in 1999, China's airline industry was in its infancy. And if any of you remember what the infancy of our air travel in America was, it was fraught in the early days. Well, we didn't know the front end looked very nice. It looked just like a American. When you go to the airport, there the front end of it was you lined up, and the clerk was there and took your bags, and the stewardess quite convincing. Um, but we were at a Airbnb or and having breakfast with an airline pilot in San Diego, and we mentioned that we'd taken legs of airlines in China, and his eyes rolled up, and he said, "Well, I don't know what your attitude towards risk is. Maybe you're a skydiver." But and he pointed out to us that it was the riskiest thing we'd ever done. That the back end of the Chinese uh, airlines was a joke that was in international pilot circles. So I suppose they made a lot of progress, but it remains to be seen. Okay, that was my little tangent on Chinese airplanes for tourists. Okay, anything else? If not, we'll see y'all next week.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks, John.
John.
Thanks,
Bye,
John.
bye.
Bye bye.